Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode on Fit as a Fiddle. Our guest is Elan Gepner-Dales. He serves as the U.S. Director of Sky Schools, an initiative that the International Association for Human Values, or IAHV, will be talking a lot about the Sky program and IAHV on the show today. But Elan is amazing because he has seen the creation of a sustainable and scalable program that's now been taught in 228 schools in 28 states across the U.S., which is absolutely incredible. Elan comes with an amazing level of ability to connect with humans, and just in my several brief conversations and interactions with him, all virtually of course, due to the pandemic, he's such an awesome human being, and I'm really excited for our audience to hear more about your work and the impact that you're making on the lives of so many hundreds and thousands of people in the world. So welcome to the show, Elan.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'll let you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about what kind of brought you into this space. And then I'd love for people to know about the Sky program and IAHV and how it's set up and how it's organized in the United States, but also it's a global organization. So how that kind of applies to the work that you do.
Yeah. Great. So, how I actually got into this work very practically was I was working in Philadelphia, where I grew up, running a small but ambitious NGO at that time that was bringing arts education into schools. And it was extremely rewarding work. It was my passion and my heart, but it was exhausting. I had at that stage a strong sense of the need to serve a community that was really hurting, and so a lot of passion for it. But that passion also burns when there's just always more need than you can address. And for me, the arts, bring it kind of more personally, it wasn't about training young people as performers or poets or filmmakers. It was always about the therapeutic capacity of the arts. So I really feel personally like I made it through my adolescence and youth in many ways because of the arts. I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety and different feelings, existential questions of what was the point of all this throughout my youth. And the arts were always that place, along with sports and physical activity, where I became centered, where I found myself and felt joy and felt peace and felt connected. And so, I was bringing the arts to schools where they were being pulled out at the time. This was kind of No Child Left Behind era, and when there was so much focus, and there still is, but on testing and not enough attention on the overall well-being of young people in schools, and what does it take to keep them inspired and engaged and connected. And so the work was extremely rewarding, but I was burning out, and everybody around me in the schools was burning out. The attrition rate of teachers in Philadelphia at that time was just devastating. I think less than 60% of new teachers made it more than 2 years in the system. So people were just fleeing, and here we're in the pandemic and we're seeing the same thing, right? I mean, it's really a moment where we're looking at educators and frontline workers and medical, and so many industries that are in service right now are just burning. I talk to administrators every day who can't fill their classes. Literally, schools are shut down, not because of COVID protocols, but because they don't have teachers, right? They don't have enough subs. So there just aren't enough people who are healthy and willing. And part of that is people are infected. And other parts, people are just burnt out and quitting, leaving the profession. So I'm going down a number of roads here already, but it's in parallel to a time when I really needed support. And then I came across this program. It was at that time called the Yes Plus Retreat, which is the university retreat of the Sky Breath Meditation program. And I did it at the University of Pennsylvania. And I was already at that point in my life, I was meditating, and I was doing yoga and Tai Chi, and I had many different resources that were meaningful for me in terms of managing my stress, and had wonderful relationships and nature. But when I learned this specific practice, Sky Breath Meditation, it was really a game changer. It just took so much stress out of my system. As I used it over weeks, I found that stress just didn't stick to me in the same way. And it was remarkable. I was going into the same situation, the same incredibly challenging schools. I was working in multiple prisons, working with juveniles, and just these situations that would take all my emotional energy and were physically exhausting and logistically challenging. But I won't say fine, or like I didn't feel any tiredness, but it wasn't breaking me down. I
It
would
wasn't
say
draining you.
it wasn't draining me. Exactly. So that was personally remarkable. And that's how I discovered this work first, was really for myself. But I very quickly, started asking, well, can we give this to the students as well? And the answer was yes. And there was a program at that time called YES. It was the Youth Empowerment Seminar. So there was YES for K-12 education, and then YES Plus was in the universities. It's since become SKY, and I can share a little bit more about that thereafter and why. But I invited teachers to Philadelphia and had them work over the summer with summer school students, which are students that don't generally want to be there, and there's much more interesting things to be doing, and they are often students who struggle during the year and have to catch up. And so it's not the easiest class, and it was just amazing to see the students take to this work. And really what it is, I'm talking about it and not describing it. It's this rich social emotional experience, I'm going to say. And I don't think I've ever said that in a conversation before, but that's what's coming up right now. It's not a course, or it is a course, but it's not that you're being taught something like this is the way to live your life, or this is the rule, or this is the answer. You're being posed a lot of really good questions, and you experience a lot of very interactive activities and games, frankly, where you get to discover what works and doesn't work for you, and looking at your mind and how you see the world and your relationships and your social emotional skills. And then throughout it all, there's this constant drumbeat of attention on our stress. And how do we manage it? And how are we managing it in these different circumstances? And then these very concrete tools, largely breath-based, that alleviate that stress and shift it. So it's whether it's a quick technique that brings more focus or more energy or more calm, or a deeper technique that really cleans the system out, you feel like you have tools. So the question was simple. My answer has been complex. I got into it because I experienced it, and it was a game changer for me. I saw it with kids, and it blew me away. And then really, I think the kicker was I started sharing it with my colleagues and other educators, and I saw what it did for them. And at that point, I felt like, well, I just need to support this. And so I shifted, I was volunteering and shifted into putting more and more of my attention on this work. And then it kept me. So it's been a real gift. That was over a decade ago to find. I feel like I stumbled across it. I can't take any credit for this. You very graciously in the introduction gave me some acknowledgement for my participation in this work in the last decade that's seen it grow, but it grows because it works. And I've simply been in a beautiful opportunity of sharing that and inviting people to come have an experience. I don't take credit for this work. I didn't create it. And it's just really profound technology. It's this inner technology of how the mind and system works. It's not just coming out of a university recently. It's really deep practices with a long lineage in yoga and a real tradition and brilliance around how the system works, right? And so it pulls from a real science of yoga and looking at the system and the mind and understanding what is effective. And then these practices that are just so time tested and so profound and so well researched and so effective.
Yeah, it's like there's like an ocean of knowledge, and then you're like the pot that like scoops out a piece of it and you pour it into other people's cups. And it's like this like continuous process of just passing along this plethora and expansive amount of knowledge. And I don't even know if knowledge is the word. Like I know that it's hard to describe it, but I know having experienced a lot of this work for myself, I see it just like you explained as like an experience. It's like that social, emotional, cognitive life sort of a thing. It's can be simplified to saying this is a breathing technique, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. And so we're very grateful that you've done amazing work. I mean, and we're going to talk more about especially I'd like to hear about the stuff you've done in the prisons and the schools, the experiences that you've had. But all in all, just for the audience to understand, the concepts that Elan is bringing up today, really hail from an ancient knowledge, and it's just kind of trickled down and formulated in a way that can be digestible, and create some specific understanding so that people can actually access it. This is one method of being able to access and tap into that really ancient knowledge and structure and tradition, like he just mentioned. So having said that, I'd love for you to actually give a little bit even more bird's eye view background on Sri Ravi Shankar and the work that he's done and how IAHV came about, and what exactly the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, or the sky breathing technique, can be described as. I know it's very hard to describe it, but I'd love for the audience to just get a little bit of a sense of how you might explain it to somebody who's new to it.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so very happy to, and I really want to give credit where credit is due here. So the founder of this organization is Sri Ravi Shankar, just an amazing conduit, and meditation teacher, wellness teacher, international humanitarian. We could spend the rest of the time going through his resume and we wouldn't do it justice. It really feels like the opportunity to work for Dr. Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, or closely with the Dalai Lama. They're just these individuals who take so much responsibility in the world, right? You find in every era people who really look at the world's challenges and say, we can do this, right? We can do better. We can come together. We can transcend these challenges by taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. And that's really inspiring. And so, his work is just remarkable. He's created these two organizations. There are a number of other organizations as well, but specifically the Art of Living Foundation and the International Association for Human Values. And at the core of them is a vision of, I say, two things: really creating a one world family, acknowledging that we have so many differences, right? We're all so unique in our heritage and our ethnic environments and our cultures, and it's in our religions. They're all precious and beautiful, but they don't need to be our divisions. They really can be things that we celebrate together and cherish our own backgrounds and honor each other's. And that opportunity is so real. And so often we fall into our differences and focus on them in a divisive manner. In this country, you feel it so palpably right now, where we're so willing to split hairs over certain ideology or certain political sentiment or economic ideas. And it comes down to it, right? We're all fellow countrymen and women, and we're all human beings, right? So
it's funny. I actually just started reading Sapiens last night. I don't know if you know the book, but it's basically just like the evolution of mankind, like the evolution of history of humans. And I've just read like the first 10 pages, and I had like the exact same sentiments as you just described. I'm like, can't believe that we just do this to each other and fight each other and have these genocides and these wars. And it's like, yo, we all come from the exact same thing, from the exact same place. There's not a lot of difference. It's just this, what we create. And you can, of course, keep going about, but I absolutely fully agree that the Art of Living is an organization that really, creates that one world concept and brings people together.
Yeah, it's an amazing intention, right? That our differences are really on the skin, not to be too literal about it, but they're on the surface. When you get down to our core, our basic wants, our basic needs, we are so much more similar, what we're looking for in life. And so to be able to connect in that. So one world family is not about denying differences. It's about really celebrating what makes us each so unique and depth. And a lot of it is about preserving culture and honoring culture that's being also lost. That's the other challenging thing in our society, is that as we modernize, a lot of our rich culture is also being lost. So it's not about denying, but it is about celebrating and connecting. And again, it's so easy for me to go on tangents because there's so much to talk about here. But the Art of Living Foundation in the last 15 years has been hosting these World Culture Festivals, celebrating the anniversary of the organization, but really they're opportunities to bring people together. And the first one was in India with like 2.5 million people that came together. And then the 30-year was in Olympic Stadium in Berlin, this place that was home to so much, frankly, hate during the Nazi regime, now being used as a place to really celebrate global humanity and arts. And then in 2016 in Delhi, there was the 35th, had 3.7 million people come together, and just you'd see every flag of the globe in this sea of humanity that you've never seen. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, we go to sporting events, you go to a march on Washington, maybe you get 1 million people even, but just 3.7 million people. It's something you can only do in India or somewhere else, but the folks came from all over the world. And just that shared humanity and celebration of each other's dance and music and culture. And you had political figures and spiritual leaders from all over the globe just honoring this intention. And that's really a miraculous thing. And it's really, so what is it? It's a volunteer organization, but at the core of it is these tools to manage our stress. So I mentioned One World Family. The other side of it is a stress-free, violence-free society. And really, if you look at what divides us, if you look at where we end up coming in conflict, so often it isn't the issues, it is our stress and the trauma and everything that's loaded. When we can de-escalate internally, it's much easier to listen. It's much easier to communicate across difference. It's much easier to be present in tension and maintain our care and our empathy and our compassion and move much more effectively. When we're caught in our stress and trauma and we're overwhelmed, we revert very quickly back to our defensiveness and our aggression and those things that are not our highest potential, right? So Art of Living is an invitation to any individual to go learn some tools for themselves that can help them manage their stress. You can take a weekend course. The Sky Breath meditation course is 6 hours online right now, and it will be just a bath of relief for the stress in your life through these breathing practices. At the core of it is, as you mentioned, the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, Sky Breath meditation, which is this incredibly powerful rhythmic breathing process. And I can't break down the science. I'm not qualified to tell you how it all works, but the experience is from a few minutes of breathing, just the tension and the stress really draining away and the energy levels rising very dramatically. I mean, you're very quickly, I can talk about our parasympathetic peace state and our fight or flight state, that we spend so much of our life in that fight or flight state. And I think there was a study recently that showed that an average American spends close to 50% of his or her life in some level of elevated fight or flight, right? And this is not how we're designed to live. We're meant to spend 1% of our life, right? When a tiger is chasing you, if we look at an evolutionary perspective, that moment where you're threatened, that's when those systems are meant to kick in. But in our society today, anything that we feel threatens us triggers it. So social anxiety, too little time, too much to do, conflict with individuals in our lives, our anxiety, whether it's external in our circumstances, our work, our money, all of these things, or whether it's internal, our own fears, our own exhaustion, it all triggers that response. And that response is our cortisol, which comes into the brain that makes it very tricky to think clearly. It's why we get confused when we're panicked or so, but it's also when a student is studying at a test, why it's very hard to think. And then adrenaline, that we all know that feeling. And what happens is just little bits of cortisol and adrenaline are in our system all the time, and it really breaks us down. But when you do these breathing practices, specifically the Sky Breath meditation, you're able to drain those hormones out and bring back all the endorphins and the serotonin and the oxytocin and the happy hormones. And you're able to come back into the prefrontal cortex, right? So we have this amazing prefrontal cortex. It was incredible evolution. This is like the iPhone, what are we up to now? Like 13 of our hardware. And this allows us to have self-regulation and self-awareness and all these incredible cognitive capacities that as human beings we have, and that separate us from I'll say our siblings in the animal kingdom, right? So, but then you also have, when you're under stress, you have the amygdala and the emotional centers and the kind of primal brain that looks very similar to a lizard or a dog. And when we are in fight or flight, we revert to that state, and it's not very advanced, and we don't have incredible self or social awareness in that stage, right? And so we're very reactive and we're quick to aggression, and we can switch this by using these breathing tools. And what happens is, as you utilize them more and more, you actually really bolster the vagus nerve. This is one of the things that happens. And the vagus nerve, for those who haven't read about it, is fascinating. It's kind of the most important nerve you haven't learned about. It runs from the brain down through the spinal column, connecting to all the organs. And really its job, I'm going to oversimplify it, I'm not the neuroscientist here, is to keep you in the parasympathetic state, this peace state, right? It keeps you integrated in this happy, healthy, calm, rest and digest state. But as it breaks down, you more and more easily go into the fight or flight state, right? It's at the center of these two systems. And so we want to bolster it. And like a muscle, we measure its wellness in tone. And the question is, how can we lift vagal tone? It's one great question for our lives. And anything that makes us happier, calm, and content does have that impact. So whether it's going into nature or the arts I mentioned, or whether it's being with loved ones. But a key question in our life is, when does stress happen to us? When? And the answer is all the time. So we need tools that we can use right in the moment as it's needed. And for me, it was the arts. But if I was, in a fight, I couldn't just go say, excuse me, I'm going to go write a poem and I'm going to come back. Or I work with students. If a student's taking a test, I mentioned, you can't say to the teacher, you know what, I need to go play basketball for half an hour. I'm going to come right back, right? We need these tools that we can use right in the moment. And that's what the breath provides. The breath has this incredible capacity to shift you, to lift your vagal tone and bring you right back into the peace state very quickly, that integrated state. And when you do the sky breath meditation, you really lift your vagal tone in a very big way. And it prevents you from just easily going into that fight or flight state. So yeah. I'm sorry, I went off on a real tangent.
No, that was perfect. I loved it. That's perfect. And the other piece that I tell this to my patients as well when I'm explaining what the breath is and describing fight or flight, in addition to a lot of the stuff you said, is that the only piece of the nervous system that kind of, between the fight or flight versus the rest and digest, that we can actually voluntarily alter is the breath, because we can't control our heart rate. We can't voluntarily control our blood pressure or blood sugar levels, or our eyes dilating or contracting or constricting. We cannot control the level, like physically, of cortisol or hormonal imbalances in our body. But what we can do indirectly is control the breath actively, voluntarily, using our override of our prefrontal cortex. It naturally can get into a shallower, high chest breathing outside of a diaphragmatic deep breathing that you would see a baby do, for example, when it's sleeping. But you can override that with your, frontal cortex, control, alt, delete, and just get out of that through the breath. That's the only way you can do it. And so I completely agree and on board. And I hope somebody learned something. I know people talk about fight or flight and rest and digest, but I hope somebody learned something with what Elan said about, the vagus nerve, and understanding that, as humans, we are constantly given these challenges and stressors in our environments. And, our goal is in life to be content. At least mine is to be content and be of service and do things in a calmer, restful, not a heightened state of emotion that, drains us. And research has shown, the big buzzword now is inflammation and understanding epigenetics. And these are all like big things that people are talking about in the literature. And if we can just control one thing for ourselves, it's what we're doing in our bodies. And that one piece that you can always connect with and always alter and always manage is your breath. You can't always just think about, okay, well, nutrition is big. It's a big topic. You have to prepare. It's like, there's more work involved. Exercise, there's more work involved. Sleep, there's more work involved. They're all important. But the breath, you can always control at every point in your life from the moment you're born until the day you pass. And so that's why I think that the work around the sky breathing technique is so important. And so to switch gears a little bit and to talk about your personal experiences, I would love for the audience to learn about the work that you specifically do in prisons and in schools. I don't know if you feel that there's a lot of similarities in the work and your experiences, at least sharing this knowledge, or there's a lot of differences, but we'd love to just hear your personal stories and how you've gone about sharing this knowledge.
Absolutely. I'll share my personal experience, also kind of just frame the larger work and the ways that it serves. So yeah, I was describing the Art of Living Foundation, and that's where any individual, anybody listening to this, you can go search Art of Living and you could find a class online almost any time where you could learn this practice for yourself, right? But then you have institutions and environments where people don't have the capacity to simply go learn this. Frankly, they don't have the privilege and opportunity to go learn these tools. I might like a stress relief program, but I'm a student in a school, or I'm an inmate in a prison, or I'm a police officer with too little time, or you feel you don't have the resources. So there's another organization called the International Association for Human Values, founded by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. At the core of all of its work is this same technology, these physiological practices, breath. And the other one I would add to that really is meditation. That if you look at what are the most effective ways to lift vagal tone, since we brought that up, I hadn't intended to, but there is the breath and also meditation and entering into meditative states, profoundly rejuvenating for the system. And so the sky technique is sky breath meditation, and through the breath you actually enter into that deep meditative state. But there's also other relaxation tools that one can learn. So IAHV has the mission of similarly building a stress-free, violence-free society by working with specifically trauma environments and individuals that have experienced deep trauma, and just communities and institutions that really are in a capacity to serve society or need the support. So we have incredible programs for veterans that I have not been a part of personally. I wish I could share those testimonies, but what I've heard and seen from the vets is just astounding. And the healing they've experienced from these practices, vets that were using dozens of pharmaceuticals and self-medicating with alcohol and marijuana and so many things just to have some life, were able to go off all of it because of learning these practices and describe getting their lives back after experiencing so much trauma. And that is just so inspiring to me, because here are these women and men who have made the highest sacrifice on the behalf of their country and community, and carry that price. And what do we really do for them? And we have vets committing suicide at just horrific rates in this country, and that really deserves attention. And here's a practice that once you learn it, it's free, it's easy to do, it's in your system. It's so empowering to be able to take responsibility for your own well-being and not be reliant on so many external medications or self-medicating, or even the circumstance in your lives. And these vets are amazing. Of course, you know, they're leaders, they're service-oriented individuals. So as they learn this, they've now really built teams of volunteers that are out bringing this to their peers. And so it's very beautiful what's happening in that program. If you're interested, you can go to Project Welcome Home Troops online, and you can find out those details, and they're free and available to a vet who might hear this. There's also an incredible program you mentioned, prisons, the IAHV prison program. And again, I'm talking about the United States, but these programs exist in other countries and around the globe. And globally, I think nearly 1 million inmates have been through this program. And it's done incredible work in the Middle East and Asia in de-radicalization, literally working with people who have deeply entrenched philosophies and ideologies and are ready to enact them, and it's been incredibly powerful. But in this country, it's just had an amazing impact. You're there in New York. We work in Rikers Island, one of the environments that is just overwhelmed right now, that COVID has hit so tremendously. I think there's very few healthy officers in Rikers Island these days, and very few. They've been really struggling with it. So we also work with the corrections officers. So this is both for the inmates and the corrections officers, and all ages, juveniles as well. And again, whenever I talk about any of these programs, to me, it's like the most inspiring thing in the world, because here you have people who have made mistakes in their lives and deserve rehabilitation. Right? I'm saying deserve. You can feel however you feel about somebody, but they're human beings who are in an opportunity to heal and to grow and to come back and serve society and pay their dues and give back. But so often things don't get better in prison. So often they get worse, right? And so many people get caught up in gang activity in prisons or otherwise. And this is really an opportunity for people to have a deep healing and therapy. So many of the individuals who've come into that environment obviously have gone through tremendous trauma in their lives and are experiencing it. It's a profoundly beautiful program. There's programs for, I mentioned iLearn It on the university. So Sky Campus Happiness is now our program on universities. We work with literally now it's over 100 universities across the country. I think 101 universities is the latest number I heard. And it's so beautiful to see university students who are finding their way kind of as adults in the world now, really opt into tools that allow them to grow and learn and hold their vision in life at such a high level, because it's such a stressful journey. And so that program is really remarkable. The Sky Schools program is my personal commitment, and I'm not going to say favorite, but that is a program focused on youth K through 12, as well as very much on educators and administrators. We also have programs for government. Cities for Peace works with NGOs and government and gangs and really brings people together. We have programs specifically for police officers, for medical staff, for government. So IHV really looks at different segments of society and provides resources so that they can learn not only the breathing practices, but also leadership and life skills appropriate to their environment to help them really achieve. So it's a beautiful organization run often by volunteers who have had an experience for themselves and choose to bring this to a community. And this is really part of the brilliance of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's model, in a way, is empowering individuals to gain tools for themselves and then go and pay it forward. So we do tremendous work with women's empowerment in the Middle East and have a real focus on trauma relief after war zones. And part of those programs is really going in and training people local in their communities to have these tools and be able to share them with their community. It's not about helicoptering somebody else in with the solution. It's about empowering individuals who are connected and care for their community to have really effective tools that they can share to empower their peers. And
I love it. And capacity building and really creating a lasting impact in society. And that's what all this is about. I know the Art of Living and IAHV, and, it's all centered around this concept and these ancient philosophies and ideas around what is happiness and what is life and what is, these existential concepts, but then boiling it all down to this very simple, accessible, free, like you mentioned, absolutely free, requires zero equipment, just a little bit of time. That's all it requires, is a little bit of focus, a little bit of time and commitment to doing, but is life altering. And I'm so inspired. I hope everyone else is listening is like, oh my God, because I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so inspirational to see the different avenues and the different communities that can be helped and uplifted with this work. And I'm so grateful that you're, a part of our lives as well in the community with Fit as a Fiddle. I hope people, are able to look into some of this work more. And if you feel as inspired as I am to, be able to volunteer your time or collaborate and be able to even improve the quality of your own life. And help yourself, because when you help yourself, you help everyone else around you too. And then you can share that as a little pot, ocean pot, fill up the water and then pour it into other people's cups as well. So, and that's just simply amazing, Elan. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in relation to your work or, just the programs at large today to our audience?
I mean, my focus is in the schools and with young people, and we have these programs for young people outside the schools as well. So I just want to share, if you're listening to this as an adult, if there's one takeaway, I would encourage you to, look up a program if you're curious and consider giving it a shot. It's you said so beautifully, Sneha, that it's really self-care, but you get to fill up your cup to pour it back out. So it's a selfish act in a way, in the most beautiful way. You will impact everybody in your life more graciously if you're able to gain the energy and gain the calm that we frankly all need. And we all have strategies to manage our stress already. But this, again, is somebody who had many tools that worked really well and was very high performing and very successful and yet still burning. I can just only encourage you to have a taste of this type of relaxation and see how it can serve you. But also, if you're a parent and you want to share this with your child, you can look up our youth programs, and you could find an online course that your child could take without a school doing it. So I would really encourage everybody to take a shot. It's a new year, and see what it looks like to really cleanse some stress out of the system. But in the schools specifically, and we're going through such a challenging time, but in the 20 years that I've been working in education, I haven't seen a non-challenging time. Education in our country is really, there's great work by amazing educators, and there's no question, and amazing students. They're the ones doing the best work, doing incredible learning. But whether it's at the highest echelons of performance where there's so much competition and so much pressure, or whether it's in schools that are really lacking in resources and not providing the young people with heroic work by educators, and not putting anybody down, but simply, huge classes and lack of basic resources, communities where kids are dealing with tremendous pressures from poverty and violence in their communities, and then not having the support in schools, we can really do better. And there are many ways in which we can do better. But for me, at the heart of all of it is the individuals, because our education system isn't a textbook, and it's not the building, and it's not the newest technology. All those things are important. It's the people, right? And when you have stressed out people, right? When the mind is stressed, learning simply doesn't happen in the same way. Mm-hmm. When we're bringing all of our baggage into the building, we're going to be distracted, right? And when it's like, if you look at soil that is rocky and hard, you're just not going to have quick blossoming plants, right? We want fertile soil, and that's our minds. So, I have my phone next to me, right? These devices that we're also attached to. So what's more important, this incredible phone or my senses with which I perceive this phone?
Your senses?
This phone's amazing, but my senses, right? Without my senses, I'm not going to work with this very well, right? If I didn't have my sight, if I didn't have my touch, hearing, right? Now we're in a school environment. And I'm going to, maybe a little challenging question here. What's more important, the subject matter that we're learning, or the mind where the learning is happening?
Definitely the mind, the learning is happening.
And again, the subject matter is critical. I'm not, the lesson plan is critical. What we're learning is the point, right? And at the same time, the mind is the environment where it's happening. So if we're not able to skillfully address that mind, then the efficiency is going to go down. then our success with the incredible curriculum and the incredible attention we put on what we're providing these young people is simply not going to be as successful. But how much time and how effective are we at addressing the state of the mind, right?
Yeah.
How much time do we dedicate in our day, if that's at the core of it, to really making sure that soil is fertile and that mind is ready to learn, that that young person is happy and present and comfortable and ready to absorb this information. And that's at every stage. And so just a little bit of attention there, right? The right tools, the right techniques, the right lesson in the right moment can make all the difference. And one great thing for which I'm grateful is that we are seeing more and more of a priority on social emotional learning and wellness at this moment in education. And the pandemic is devastating. It's also putting a spotlight on our mental health challenges and the incredible mental health disparities in our society, for women, for minority communities, for lower socioeconomic. There's really some big disparities we need to look at. And so in our education, to make these tools pervasive and make sure that every child comes in, and yes, they have a book and they have a teacher, they have a stress-free teacher, and they have the time to manage their stress. That's really, you know, a passion and a commitment that I have, and I hope we as a society can come around. It doesn't take long. It isn't hard to do, but you need tools that really work. And that's what's amazing about what we're able to share, and there are many others doing similar work, is that these are time-tested practices that for thousands of years have shown their benefit for all people. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe. These are physiological practices that work for all human beings. And I think it's really a birthright of every human being to know how their body works, to know how their physiology works. I mean, you're a physical therapist. You help people come back into their bodies that they're so often separated from in our society, where everything is so external, right? To understand how our system really works seems simple, but it's not common in our world these days, and we deserve that. So yeah, that's my pitch and my joy to be part of. And I'll end with this. You know, there's nothing better than hearing from the young people how it serves them, right? And hearing them talk about having more space in their brain after a breathing practice, or, you know, finally feeling safe and at home in school where they're used to being on edge. And just so many kids go home and teach their parents and teach their siblings, because they're like, you deserve this and you need this, right? And in our society, we spend so much time dealing with things as they come up later in life, dealing with the health issues that come up, the huge cost of healthcare in this country, and dealing with you know, the school to prison pipeline. Why do we have a school to prison pipeline, and why are we dealing with the highest levels of incarceration in the world in this country? Well, why aren't we preventing it? Why aren't we upstream helping young people have the tools they need to do what's good for them in their lives? Nobody wants to choose strategies that aren't going to serve them and are going to hurt others and hurt themselves. That's not our natural inclination. It means that we're stressed and hurting and desperate when we go in those ways. So we have the capacity, by working with young people in the right way, to transform our whole society, to prevent so many of the ailments and issues that we really struggle with later on. So I could talk forever on it, but it's beautiful to see the shift in schools, dramatic reduction in behavioral incidents, dramatic increase in academic productivity. And the thing that for me is most powerful is just the feeling in the buildings when you walk into a school and people are happy to be there. They want to be there. And when they share in the climate surveys that it now feels like a place that I want to come, and where people are smiling and they're connected. I mean, we all deserve to work in those environments, and our kids deserve to learn and grow in those environments. And if we can collectively manage our stress, we can make our society those environments. So.
Such wise words. Thank you so much, Elan. This has been so lovely. I'm so inspired, and I'm super excited to work and collaborate with you, with the IAHV, and Physical Therapy International Service Foundation in the coming months and years, and hopefully decades in the future. But you're such a gift. Thank you so much. You're so wonderful, and the way that you describe these concepts and can be so complicated and so difficult, but your calmness and the way that you break it down is so lovely. So thank you so much for being on the show today. And I hope the listeners learned something from Elan, and all of the information regarding the Sky Schools and IAHV and the Art of Living will be in our show notes so that you can check it out and learn something new. That's the purpose of the podcast, is you learn something new every day, every week. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Sneha. Thank you for your incredible work and your incredible demeanor and the space you hold, the gift of the work you're doing. We really look forward to collaborating and growing together. Thank you.
That's the goal, growing together.